Welcome back to KC Cares, Kansas City's nonprofit voice. We're telling the stories of Kansas City nonprofits and the people behind them. KC Cares is proudly sponsored by the Ewing Marion Kaufman Foundation, and we continue to bring you the information you can use from a safe distance. Kansas City has had one of the worst years ever with gun violence, and every day it seems like we wake up and there's some tragic news of someone who has been injured or lost life to gun violence. But there is good news. There's organizations like the one we're going to speak about today, and that's Grandparents Against Gun Violence. And we're so honored to have their president. That is Miss Judy Sherry. Welcome, Judy.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
It's great to have you. Judy is the marketing communication queen of Kansas City, who has just put time, energy, and talent into this very important and interesting endeavor in our community. Judy, tell us what, obviously, it's Grandparents, but what the organization is about and focused on.
What we are about is making the community aware of the importance of preventing gun violence. That's our mission. Our vision is that someday all people in our community will be safe from gun violence. And I always like to explain to people that gun violence, though what you talked about, Ruth, in terms of the horrific homicide rate is just heartbreaking. Gun violence encompasses suicide and accidental deaths. And of the approximately 40,000 people a year who die from firearms, 1/3 of that is homicides. 2/3 are suicide and accidental deaths. And frankly, that 2/3 is where we put our focus because we are so concerned with gun safety, responsible gun ownership, and keeping your guns safe. So I think it's always important to point that out.
Well, in reading some of the material you were kind enough to send, I thought it was interesting that you make a point that you're not necessarily opposed to guns.
Well, we're not. I mean, if you want to know the real truth, certainly many people in our organization are, but we like to deal in the possible. And there is no point in this country to be against guns. People own guns for a variety of reasons. Some people, they like to hunt, they like to collect, they remember their wonderful memories of hunting with their grandfather or their father. That's all just fine. What we're against is the careless handling of guns and the fact that so many people don't understand how to use them, they don't keep them safely locked. And that is how we get into the problems of suicide and accidental deaths.
You all started the organization here in Kansas City back in 2013. What was it that motivated you to do this? You're a very busy lady, I know this. So how come you added this to your plate?
Well, let me go back just a shade. Yes, we were founded in September of 2013. But in early October of 2012, I went to a lecture given by a man, sadly recently died, Jim Atwood. And he had been at gun violence prevention business for over 40 years. He was the one. And I left that presentation at the library so motivated and so interested. And then, as life has a way of getting in the way of your real life, I went back to my job and my laundry and fixing dinner and what have you. And then Sandy Hook happened. And of course, we all were shocked and horrified. And then in January, when these bereaved families went to Congress asking for just basic common sense gun laws and were rebuffed, I thought, this is just got to stop. Can't be. And I got very interested. And then, as luck would have it, Mary Sanchez, who I'm sure you remember, did a column in her in the Star about two women who had started a group in Cape Cod. It was called Grandmothers Against Gun Violence. And one of the women's grandson, fortunately, was not killed, but he was locked in an instrument closet with a teacher for over an hour and a half. So I like to say that Mary was the beginning of Match.com, Match.com, because I wrote her right away and said, can you put me in touch with these women? Which she did. And as they say, the rest was kind of history. Then I had something to go on. And so another woman contacted me and she was interested. And we just said, let's do this. Let's get our community to be as interested in gun violence prevention as we saw the women in Sandy Hook. So that's how it began.
Putting together an organization to make change and being a nonprofit is not easy. So can you talk a little bit about the steps you took? You did this outreach. Mary wrote this great column. You make a call. How do you put it all together?
Well, then Mary was kind enough, once I told her that we were going to get this started, she wrote still another column. So that was the beginning. And then we just laughed. We had our first meeting in the Prairie Village Community Center, in a little room that holds about 30 people. And as we went around the room saying, how did you get here? Why are you interested? About half of the people were from my exercise class. But another quarter were my friends, and then there were a few people who had read about it in the papers. So it really was word of mouth. But what we realized then was how interested people were. It wasn't, I'd love to take credit for, hard work, but this was an unmet need. And you and I are both in marketing, and we know you can't create a need. And this was obviously something that people had thought about and just didn't know where to begin. And so we gave them the opportunity to begin. So it just grew. We started having meetings, I think probably in January of 2014. We have met monthly for an educational meeting every month since that began, including now through the wonders of Zoom. So we continue to educate our members. I like to tell people that it is an interested and interesting group of people. We get probably between 70 and 80 people at our meetings, and now we'll Zoom on the same number. And we do all kinds of educational programs. We started out, our first meeting, of course, was about the Second Amendment. We're big believers. If you're going to be an advocate, you better know what you're talking about. And so we had somebody come in and speak to us about the Second Amendment. And I'll tell you a quick kind of funny story, because I learned a lot. I always learn lessons. This person was an expert in the Second Amendment, but he didn't know much about us, and I didn't know anything about him. So I think what he thought was this was going to be a bunch of old ladies, white hair, little bun, sitting in rocking chairs, perhaps knitting. So he was very unprepared. It was not a very good meeting at all. And what I learned from that was to vet every speaker, which I have done since then, and always let people know, as I say, we are interested, interesting, active people. So that was my lesson. And we've had speakers then talking about mental health and domestic violence and conflict resolution and so many topics. I can't even remember them all, but every month we have somebody come. And every year we kind of name the year. One year was the year of volunteers, and we talked a lot about different ways people could volunteer and make a difference. Last year was the year of collaboration. We thought it's really important that we, again, know what other groups in the city are doing and how we can not duplicate their efforts, but complement with an E what they do.
Who are some of the organizations that you do collaborate with?
We have about 30 co-sponsors, Ad Hoc Group Against Crime. Village Church has a very active social action task force. Mainstream, Children's Mercy Hospital, Kansas City, Missouri Health Department. Through the years, we have built up quite a group of co-sponsors. And we partner constantly began with the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department. We now partner with 13 different police departments across the city because pre-COVID, one of our major programs, it still is a program, but pre-COVID, we were able to go out in the community. We distribute high quality gun locks at no charge. And in the beginning, I'm going to digress a minute and go back and say what a great
Sure.
community this is, because we were able to get in and see Sly James. That was easy. He was a huge supporter. He put us in touch with the Kansas City Police Department. I knew some people at Children's Mercy. So people were so willing and interested in what we were doing that it made it really easy to get our Lock It for Love program up. So when we began with the police department, I'm sure you know they have community interaction officers. And one of the jobs of those people is to go to community events. And so they adopted us. And whenever there was a community event, they invited us. And so we brought our display of gun locks. But we talk about it as a gun safety education program. We don't just give out the locks. The locks are expensive. They're not the kind that you can get through the NRA, which has the locks don't last very long. These are high quality, almost $5 a piece. And we determined early on that at every instance that we would have a police officer with us to demonstrate how to use the gun lock. We felt rather than just handing somebody a gun lock, we would show them how to do it. And that's what we continue to do. We have a piece of educational material that talks about how important gun safety is, that there are over 4 million children in this country who live in a home with an unlocked gun.
Oh my gosh.
And so we just stress over and over the importance. We're not judging people. If you have a gun, we're not asking why, how, whatever. We're just saying, keep it safe. Keep it away from little kids. We call them impulsive teenagers and curious toddlers. And what we know about suicide, for instance, is that often the whole process of thinking of it through sadly completing a suicide can be less than 10 minutes. So if in those 10 minutes, an unlocked gun is not sitting out or put away, but the person knows where it is, we can save a life. We've given out close to 3,000 gun locks. And we don't have the data yet, although we're working on it. I know for sure we have saved more than one life.
That's incredible. We're talking with Judy Sherry with Grandparents Against Gun Violence. And it's interesting to frame it when you gave the statistic that 2/3 of the violence you're talking about is not on the street. It's in our homes. It's accessibility. How do you afford to purchase these locks? Nonprofits always have to deal with the money side, right? So
Right.
for you all, where does that come from and how do you do it that you're able to hand out these preventative tools?
We were very lucky. We did get a grant from the Health Forward Foundation, but we do an annual forum, which I will mention in a moment, where people can contribute through that forum. That is our major fundraiser. And I really love it because it's a combination fundraiser, but it also is a highly educational community event. This is our 7th annual. It's virtual this year, as is everything. But we began with our first speaker. We had maybe 75 people. Our first speaker was Stacy Newman, who is a legislator from St. Louis, who is very interested in gun violence prevention. The next year we had Rex Archer, our head of the Kansas City, Missouri Health Department, and he was way ahead of his time. We were talking about gun violence as a public health issue. That's now commonly understood that it truly is, but he was way ahead. Then we got real brave and we solicited a pretty good donation. We were able to get Leonard Pitts, who is the Pulitzer Prize winning author. We sometimes have him in the Star. And he talked about gun violence, the culture of fear. And that was so important because we know that some people own guns because they think it's in their self-defense. What we know data-wise is you're probably 22 times more likely to be killed with your own gun than save yourself. That lots of people, yep, I see your face.
Say that again. I think that's
You are
really important.
22 times more likely to be killed with your own gun than putting off an intruder or whatever. So, Leonard talked about that, the fear that some people have, that they need self-defense. But the other piece of that fear is those of us who are afraid of guns or afraid of unlocked, unsafely stored guns also had fears. And because we cannot even get the basic background check law passed, we now can be sitting in a restaurant, or again, pre-COVID, that you'd be out and you'd be sitting next to somebody who might have a gun from his or her holster. You have no idea if this person is nuts or a good, responsible gun owner. So yes, we have fears too. And I think we talk very often about rights. And I believe the phrase is something like, my rights begin at the end of my nose, something of that nature. And the reality is, yes, people do have a right to own a gun if they are not a convicted felon, if they are not a domestic abuser, if they are not seriously mentally ill. They have that right. But we also have the right to feel safe when we're out. We have a right to expect that guns have some kind of responsible legislation. And even Justice Scalia, who was wrote the opinion in what's called the Heller case, where the Second Amendment was expanded from just militia to include individuals. Even Justice Scalia said every right has a responsibility. And he named, again, domestic violence perpetrators, people with serious mental illness, and felons. So there is no reason on earth that there shouldn't be some restrictions on gun ownership, none.
You have your big event coming up. Tell us a little bit about it and how people could be part of it, since we're dealing in a virtual world.
Thank you. And my hope is that we will go viral. I'd like to have somebody from England tuning in on Monday. The event is Monday, October 12th. It's from 9 to 12:30. The title of this is Gun Violence, Going Beyond Thoughts and Prayers. And I will tell you, Ruth, when we thought of this title in February or so, we had no idea how prescient we were, how much gun violence has really exploded. And that is because of COVID, gun sales have gone through the roof. More than 3 million guns were purchased in March. And it just goes on and on and on. In fact, ironically, now we're facing a lack of ability to get ammunition. So many people have guns. So the corollary to that is more guns, many new gun owners. And so we have increases in suicide, domestic violence, and even accidental death. So going beyond thoughts and prayers, what we're saying is, of course, people who have lost a loved one, no matter how that loss took place, certainly they deserve our thoughts and prayers. But what do you do after that? How many vigils do we want to see? How many times do we want to see some unctuous politician stand up and say that with nothing to go with it? So we have 3 panels so that our attendees can hear community leaders talk about what they are already doing to go beyond thoughts and prayers and what their plans are. So we have a faith panel, we have a business panel, and we have a government panel. And they will be, I'm happy, I don't know how much time you have, I can tell you who's on it. But they're going to be talking about what are they already doing. For instance, Tom R. from the Village Presbyterian. They have a very active social action committee, and they've done many things to help stem the tide of gun violence. And so we want to hear that, and we want people to understand that there are things we can all do. One of the things I think of is the simple acts of kindness. how do we try to tamp down some of the anger we're seeing, the anger and the angst that we see because we're all worried and locked up and all of that. And so there are many things we can do as individuals. And that's what we want to come out of this conference. How do we get beyond thoughts and prayers? And so my plug, because advertising is in fact my business, the registration is still open. That's the good part. When you have a venue, you've got to cap it. We don't have to cap it. So you can go to our website, which is www.mocans.org. In your head, you can say Missouri, Kansas, Grandparents Against Gun Violence, mocans.gagv.org. And it's very simple to see how you can register. Registration is just $25. And what we tell people then is, if you register and you get the link, we'd love it if you share it. Glad to see you share it. That's why I'm hoping somebody who's registered knows somebody in London who's going to send it so that we can spread the word. We can go beyond thoughts and prayers. We must go beyond thoughts and prayers.
How else can the community engage with you?
They can go again to our website and read about us. They can join. They can come to our meetings. They're open. We like to have members. We have about 2,000 people in our database. We have about 300 dues paying members, which is fine. We don't ask any questions. Our whole job, well, we have two jobs. One is to educate the community, to keep the issue of gun violence, suicide, and accidental deaths. Those are our causes because we feel we can affect those. Our hearts break at the homicides, truly. But that's an issue the city can't figure it out. The police can't figure it out. So certainly we can't, but we can make a dent in lives lost to suicide and accidental deaths. So people can attend our meetings. They can sign up for our newsletter. Our kind of bywords are educate, advocate, participate. Educate is our community forums and our monthly meetings. Advocate is fruitlessly writing to our legislators. But we do believe that you have to do that. When we were first founded, we were all about, we're going to get those laws changed. We're going to get those background checks. Well, by the time you get the form letters back from our federal and local legislators, you begin to see not going to happen. You still have to do it. But so that's our advocate. And participate is get out in the community, spread the word. You could be a Lock It for Love volunteer. We love it. We have 70 now. We have, I think it's 4 events this weekend, because the Kansas City Police and the faith community have a major endeavor this whole weekend. And every one of the 6 the 6 patrol stations have events going on. And so we will be out in those communities giving out gun locks. Most of them have drive-through. Again, we can't be together, but many of the events, we now partner a great deal with harvesters because there is so much need for food. And so there are many drive-up pantries. The Kansas City, Missouri Health Department does them. We participate in many, and we just have a table there with a sign that says, if you need a gun lock, drive here. And we have now they're all packaged in little plastic bags with how to use your gun lock, some information about some astonishing information, the most one being 4.6 million kids live in a home with an unlocked, unsecured gun. So being a Lock It for Love volunteer is great. We also demonstrate 2 big events we do every year. June 2nd is Gun Violence Awareness Day. And we've had programs. We now, for the past couple of years, have just gone to the famous Plaza Fountain and stand there like all other groups do with our signs. And we get lots and lots of support, honking and waving, and sometimes not such good waves. And then on December 14th, we observe the anniversary of Sandy Hook. And we coordinate that closely with Moms Demand Action. And again, we just stand out and demonstrate and hold up signs. So there are many ways that people can get involved. And we have a new project now called Vision Quilt. By some happenstance, I can't even remember how I found this woman, but this is a woman in Eugene, Oregon, who was so moved by the AIDS quilt and the attention that brought to the problem of AIDS. She decided she wanted to do a quilt, same, but in this day and age, it's a virtual quilt. So we are asking people, giving people the opportunity to make a quilt. We give them the material, and they can make any kind of panels. And those are all on our website if people are interested.
Good.
And it's a wonderful way to get involved. And we now even have our own section on the Vision Quilt website, on their quilt, because we've had such good response. So there are lots of ways to get involved.
And we'll share some of those images on our
Wonderful.
Facebook. We'd love to.
Wonderful.
Before we run out of time, you have, I think, given birth even to a kind of an offshoot or an overview, the Heartland Coalition Against Gun Violence.
Yes. Again, in the very early stages, we decided we did not want to duplicate efforts. So at our first forum, we said, let's coordinate right now with like-minded organizations. And that's when we began. That was when Mainstream joined us, Ad Hoc joined us, All Souls Church. I think we had 7 organizations. And we needed a name. And we needed a name right then and there. So I said, okay, Heartland Coalition Against Gun Violence. And that is really a program of GAG. But that is the group that actually puts on the community forums. They are sponsored by the Heartland Coalition Against Gun Violence. So that's what we do. That's where our co-sponsors are listed. And this year, again, I think we have about 30 co-sponsors.
That's
and
great.
All of that will be on our website shortly.
And my goodness, I totally missed this. Do you have to be a grandparent to be part of your organization?
Thank you for asking that. Absolutely not. In fact, our hope is that in some ways we are going to catch on with millennials. Millennials are now very interested in the world. And we've even hired somebody under 30 to manage our social media. And we have a very active Instagram account, a very active Facebook account. And no, you don't have to be a grandparent. I do tell people sometimes who aren't grandparents yet that this is a good thing you can say to your married kids. You know, I'd like you to make me honest. I'm a member of this group. But no, we're delighted. And as I say, my hope is that we will get people, you know, we're not going to live forever. And so we'd like to be able to pass the torch to the next generation. We've done some good groundwork and we'd like to have their support.
Well, Judy, as always, you've got all this energy and all this knowledge, and how lucky that Grandparents Against Gun Violence has you helping to lead the charge and making a difference. And if folks are interested, they should definitely go to your website, Lock It for Love. You've got lots of things coming up. So thank you for all the work that you're doing.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share it. I really appreciate it.
We want to thank you for listening to KC Cares, Kansas City's nonprofit voice. We're produced by Charitable Communications, and we're proudly sponsored by the Ewing Marion Kaufman Foundation. To be a guest on KC Cares or for underwriting opportunities, please visit kccaresonline.org, and you can spread the love and find us on Facebook and Twitter at KC Cares Radio and on Instagram at KC Cares Online. Thank you for listening to KC Cares.